Tasneem is a South African teacher with over 15 years of experience currently teaching in the UAE. She combines her passion for teaching, podcasting, and sustainability to empower learners and educators. Through radio and school initiatives, she inspires her learners to become confident speakers both in and out of the classroom. So, hello, Tasneem, if you can come on to our webinar. Switch on your camera and microphone. Hello,
Hello, good
Tasneem.
afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited to be here to meet all of you today and really looking forward to sharing my content with you today. It's wonderful to see everyone here from so many different countries. Such an exhilarating feeling. Thank you for joining.
Lovely. So, Tasneem, I'll hand over to you now and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Hind.
Thank you.
So, hello and welcome to this webinar hosted by British Council. I want to thank British Council today for inspiring a group of teachers to come together and share wonderful insight with all you wonderful people from around the world. I see people here from Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Malaysia, Oman, China, Pakistan, Palestine. Wow, wonderful. It's just so wonderful to meet all of you today. Alhamdulillah. So, could you please drop an A if you can hear me clearly and all is good, and then we'll begin. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, before the written page, there was the spoken word, right? Before classrooms, there were gatherings beneath palm trees, beside fireplaces, under the moon, from the coastlines of the Maghreb to the mountains of Lebanon and the deserts of Arabia. Our ancestors taught through rhythm, they taught through proverb and voice. Today, we are the new Hakawati, the keepers of stories in a digital age. But the microphone has become our campfire. The podcast has become our gathering place. And through digital storytelling, students can rediscover their identity, their confidence, and their connection, building tradition and technology. Because in every MENA home, words were more than sounds, right? They were rhythm, a rhythm of belonging, like a proverb carried the wisdom of of a village. It carried the courage of generations. And now we can invite the same genuineness into our classrooms. It's a rhythm that can rise again, but through microphones, through the digital era, and most importantly, through the brave voices of our students. Because every learner now becomes a modern Hakawati, a storyteller, weaving English words into melodies of their own lives. So, the webinar today invites you and your students to honor that legacy, right? Let your stories travel, not just through pages, but through sound and soul. And I want to begin with Bismillah, because Bismillah is a prayer which it has beauty and it carries hope. So, as Hind mentioned to you, my name is Tasneem. I'm from South Africa, born and brought up there, schooled and worked there for most of my life, living in the UAE for just over 2 years. And teaching has always been at the forefront of my life. I've worked with children on many different platforms. And to be able to give children a voice, to be able to speak and share things is something that is so wonderful. I want to share with you now my my sorry, I want to share with you my PowerPoint or my slideshow rather. Let me just get that to you now, and then we can delve into it in a better way, right? If you can see my screen, please just pop me an A in the chat so that I know that we are all good to go. Right, wonderful. So, as you can see, we are talking about oral traditions, right? And when you're an educator, when you're a mother, or when you're a father, when you're a teacher, when you are person that is able to speak and educate and talk and give words to others, it's such an empowering feeling because there's power in the real human voice, right? So this is where our content stems from. Okay, today I want to connect heritage with modern classrooms. So we're going to look at how do we bring MENA's rich oral traditions into today's English lessons, because storytelling is at the heart of communication. And with digital technology today, this audio gives it new life. So our session will explore ways to empower learners' voices through podcasts and audiobooks. And it's such a wonderful and reviving feeling to be able to know that storytelling can be made into something so wonderful. When we sit with our students in the class, the most important thing that we must remember is our tone of voice and how we speak to them. Because storytelling is heart work. It's more than teaching, it's reviving life into life and creating a new communication channel. When children listen to us, they listen with their ears, but they must also be able to listen with their heart. So, by being able to communicate with them in a way that gives them comfort, is something that is so important as an educator. Let's look at our objectives for today. So, at the end of the session, inshallah, you will be able to design a simple podcast or audiobook based classroom activity. You will be able to connect oral traditions to literacy, creativity, and learners' voices. And don't forget, the most important part of our session today is learning how to integrate these two concepts by using free and accessible tools. So, this is where we talk about digital technology. And then we'll talk at the end and reflect about how digital storytelling supports inclusion in the MENA region. So my audience and interest is to target mainly elementary educators, but I want this to be an open box of communication. I want to create interest in middle and high school classrooms as well. So let me just ask you a simple question. And if you see it's coming up on your screen in a little cloud, would you be interested to try this out in your classrooms? Give me a thumbs up if you would. Absolutely, absolutely. I see many thumbs up coming. I see. Yes, because we must realize, right? Storytelling isn't just about storytelling, it's about creating new life into an existing story or an existing portfolio. And what's important to know is that why we want to use digital technology, because as educators, we have to be innovative in our teaching because this will breed interest. And why should we not try to better what we already know, right? We should always try to be better. You know, they say every day is a learning day, and every teaching experience is a new teaching experience because we learn something every day as we go along. And I see some of your comments coming through about how you use storytelling with children and how they get so excited about presentations. Um, Absolutely. You know, this is something that is so, so important for us. So when we talk about storytelling in the classroom, we are trying to weave something into the heart of communication before writing, before books, before all of this. And our goal at the end of this is to see how podcasting and audiobooks can empower student voices and honor local culture at the same time. So when we connect heritage with modern classrooms, right? These are a few of the tools that we can talk about that will come out of this to preserve culture, preserve identity. Oral storytelling will boost confidence. It will also spark imagination. It sharpens speaking skills with our kids, not to mention improve listening skills as well. But the most important one I want to talk about here is it teaches students empathy. Now, empathy is a small word, right? but it creates such a vast concept, because when we break down the word empathy, it creates something that connects love, identity, culture, respect, and it breeds all of these together to create such a vibrancy and wonder in oral storytelling. So we talk about preserving culture, preserving identity, boosting confidence, but all of this ties into how we teach it in the classroom. And the most important concept is when we understand that something like oral storytelling teaches students empathy. And what's the plus from this? That is, it will encourage creativity and it will unleash powerful speech, because some children are very good academically in the classroom. They can write a whole script for you, but they might not be able to come forward in the classroom and be able to present this to you. Or on the other hand, someone might be so good at storytelling and speaking, but they might not be good at writing. So when you tie the two together, it makes such a vibrancy in the classroom because everybody starts thinking out of the box. And this is what we want. As educators, we want everybody to think out of the box. So why do oral traditions matter? Well, oral traditions matter because values carry humor and wisdom, right? When we bring local stories into English lessons, we connect language, and this leads to something more important, more distinct, and we learn more about cultural identity. So when we talk about the MENA's rich oral traditions, and we talk about how we want to bring it into English lessons, this is such a wide network of things that we can talk about. Like, I could think about taking my children into the classroom and saying, "Hey, it's story time, let's sit down." Everybody leaves whatever they're doing and runs to come and sit down for the story. So when you use the word story, it already creates interest with our learners, you know. And the thing is that children are always excited to listen. They're always excited to listen because when they listen, they are able to create something in their mind. And this is important when we want to talk about creativity, when we want to talk about bringing in a very different or very rich learning environment in our classrooms. So this is important at the end of it. And storytelling is at the heart of communication. But today on our session, we're talking about how digital audio gives this storytelling and communication new life. So it will explore ways to empower our learners' voices through podcasts and audiobooks. Let's do a quick reflection, okay? Because it's always nice to stop and pause. So we'll do a think, pair, share. And this is the time for you now to type in the chat a little bit about what local proverbs do you, or what local stories or proverbs do you enjoy most in your classroom? And how could it instill English learning in the classroom? How could it improve learning for your learners as well? So just type in the chat quickly for me what you are able to answer, and then we will talk a little bit about that, because I do believe most importantly that, you know, when we combine our ideas together and we talk about things, it makes for a great educational tool. Right. So Lebanese idioms or proverbs enhance a sense of patriotism. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Comparing traditions and stories. Right. Okay. Algerian proverbs, comic strip, sharing stories about hobbies. Yes, tell them stories related to football. Gen Z slang, that's one for the books. Yes. Justice, sharing stories with life lessons, proverbs. Absolutely. You know, the thing is with children, right? Um, there's such a wide variety of things that you can talk about. And let's talk about the football quickly. I'm not a football player, but if we talk about that, you're not only going to, arouse interest in the boys in the classroom, but also the little girls, because they watch their fathers watching soccer or playing soccer or football rather, and they're able to talk about it. So they want to be in that conversation as well. Okay, yes, a proverb, thinking how to write a story, enjoy when I talk about personal experiences. Yes, absolutely. Right. So there are many different things. Yes, I like about personal events as well. So when we talk about these kind of things in the classroom, we give all of them life. We give it meaning, and we are able to arouse interest in a student. You get a student in the class who is sitting in the corner, talking, maybe I won't say afraid, but maybe not confident enough to be able to say, I want to share something with my class today. Okay. And what this does is we saying we're going to have a session where we are going to talk on the mic. And you're going to be able to hear yourself speaking after that, and other people are going to be able to hear you. Immediately, something like this will arouse their interest because everybody wants to be a superstar in front of the mic, right? Everybody wants to be able to say something and they want to be heard at the same time. Imagine the magic in the eyes of that little child when they go back home later and that podcast is shared with their parent and they listening to themselves how they were talking in the classroom about some inspiring event or local story or personal reflection on something that happened. I think it's amazing. It is so empowering to be able to give our students this type of communication tool for them to know that over and above what they learn in the classroom, there's such meaning to what they can take from a classroom activity or classroom lesson. So it is so important that we are able to give our students this type of communication tool. Wonderful, wonderful things that I could think about here. And when we think and we pay and we share, and as educators, this is important because when we share ideas like this on a global platform, it can create such an academia of knowledge that everybody can get together and say, I've done this, I've researched this, I know what it means to be able to teach children communication from different levels. And when we add in pronunciation doesn't have to be fluent all the time, especially with our native English, our children whose first language is not English. So pronunciation should be something that is loved. We must love them for their pronunciation and enjoy it at the same time. And very slowly, as we progress into the lesson, things will improve because everybody wants to be able to say a certain word, to be able to use a certain proverb or a certain sentence. But just when they are allowed to say it in their own way, it gives it so much of grace, and children enjoy it so much more. So, using moral stories, using culture, using tradition, using all these types of things in your classroom just makes magic in the classroom. I'm so glad that you are enjoying the chat, that you are enjoying the webinar so far, looking at all of your chats and all of these things. This is so important that we are able to share things like this. So just talk again about why oral traditions matter, because when we bring local stories into English lessons, we not only connecting language learning to cultural identity, but students learn pronunciation, they learn rhythm, they learn an emotional tone naturally through the spoken language. Okay, so this my next slide is talking about some free and accessible tools, right? That you can use to create podcast in your classroom. So I have three questions for you. Has anyone tried these apps before? Would you make it a lesson project of yours? Would you be brave enough to do so? Share in the chat. And if you have, Maybe you could share one success story that using student voices or audiobooks. If you have, it's okay. You know, this session is here today to create interest for you to try and empower other educators out there to be able to use this type of concept in your classrooms. But at the end of the session, I would be willing to give you many more ideas, and I would be sharing my details at the end of the session as well. So you can contact me as well, and we'll be able to go through these types of things. So when you look at the screen now, there are free and accessible tools that you can use to create podcasts. There's Anchor, which is now also called Spotify for podcasters. Okay. Let me just quickly look at the chat here. I made the students use a mic, changing their voices with the puppet girl to do an interview with each other. So wonderful. Do you know, this is something that is so amazing to be able to change their voices to mimic another character in the classroom. Something that is so, I wish it was a fly in the wall when I could watch that, because it's so wonderful to see children come out of their shell and do something that is that makes them feel so happy doing it at the same time. Role play, yes, text to voice, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. These are all ways that we can try to make these types of communication happen in the classroom. And you know, communication is the most important tool for us to be able to teach our learners. Without communication, you know, everything is a dead end. We must try as educators to be able to instill better communication strategies for our learners. And because we're moving into a digital age, so to speak, you know, they say as we sleep, the world is moving. So each day that we get up, new things are developing, new ways of technology and learning is evolving. And, you know, it's difficult to keep up with everything, but it's nice to try. Okay, so someone says, my students also love doing mini dramas. Yes, I have a debate with my S2 and S3 learners. So debating is coming in again, role play, videos with voiceover. Yes, yes, these are all different types of things that you can do with your learners. Yes, most importantly, peer discussion is very effective. And you know, I just like to comment on that because when we have peer discussion in the classroom, each learner in the classroom has a chance to say something about the other learner. And you know, with little children in the class, it's wonderful to be able to give each one of them a chance to speak. And when I use these types of communication tools in the classroom, I always try to scaffold my learners because not everybody is able to speak, like I said in the beginning. So I would take a student that's able to talk so well in the classroom and pair that student with two or three others who are a little bit shy, who are a little bit afraid of talking. So they would be able to work together to create different type of small talks at the beginning of the lesson. Yes, I love that as well. Okay, another tool that we can use is something called Audible and then Soundtrap. So these are just free and accessible tools that you can use because you know technology is so accessible nowadays. There's so much of technology out there in the world, and we need to be able to empower our students as well to use it. And when we talk about children in the elementary grades as well, you know, obviously as teachers or as educators, you know, there always needs to be transparency in everything. There always needs to be monitoring of everything. So in the classroom itself, you know, when we work with these type of tools, we need to be able to just monitor the children's access to them. So you are the custodian of their child in the classroom when you're teaching them digital communication. So don't allow them to not go away with it. Allow them to use it, to use the tools of technology, to use the tools of digital equipment, but also monitoring everything at the same time. Wonderful. I loved this chat and I love how we engaged about these apps and how you would like to make it a lesson project of yours. So raise your hands if you're going to go in your classroom on Monday and try something different with your learners. Absolutely. Wonderful. Yes. Yes, we must be able to do things differently. Put it in your lesson plan for the coming week. I'm going to do a podcast with my students using these free and accessible tools in the classroom, and make it a classroom project. You know, coming towards the term end as well, we can use it as a class project. We can give them marks for it. You know, we use Class Dojo to be able to reward them as well. Children love being rewarded for the work that they do because it's a celebration of their academic achievements. So let's give them a reason to celebrate their academic achievements. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Right. So let's brainstorm some challenges in the classroom. So I was talking about the different types of, you know, things that you can use in the classroom, you know, the tools that you can use in the classroom. So always in anything that we do, whether we are teaching a lesson, whether we are giving you know, giving children work to do, whether we are handing out an examination, we're doing an assessment, anything that we do. And if we take it out of the classroom as well, you know, even if we are doing things in the home or in our personal life, there's always a challenge. Life always comes with challenges. And the way that we deal with those challenges makes it so much more easier for us to maneuver our way through life. Okay. So some of the challenges that could come out of something like this or this type of communication, first of all, is an access to technology, right? So everybody's going to say, what if we don't have the technology in our classroom to be able to use this type of communication tool with our students? Because not every student has consistent access to devices or headphones or internet connectivity. You know, there's always some sort of struggle or something that could help us. We might have a technical problem, or we might not have enough, you know, internet connectivity, something or the other. Well, there's always a solution to this. So we could have something for offline access. I'll talk about that first, right? For offline access, we can download a podcast or an audiobook ahead of time, right? And put it onto a device or onto a USB that it can be used without Wi-Fi for that lesson, and put it onto the smartboard. So, you know, as a teacher, we always plan ahead, right? So this is what we call planning ahead, where we are able to plan ahead to be able to give our students the full function of that lesson, or to get the full benefit of that lesson. So there has to be a way, you know, we must always be able to use technology to the best of our ability. Okay. In the classroom, okay, we would be able to rotate our stations. So we create small group listening corners using one or two shared devices, while others engage in related offline tasks. So it could be script writing, it could be drawing, it could be storyboards, it could be making flip books, it could be many different ways, right, that we can use this type of technology. So we've got one device. Okay, and I see the comment coming in about flipped classroom. Yes, where students can be given links to watch the required video at home. Absolutely. There's always a way. There's always a way. So when we have one or two shared devices, like I said, you know, we can allow that technology to be shared with us in the class. We could create the station, we could rotate the station, and also we can bring everybody back together into a circle, and then we talk and we reflect and we see what everybody has come up with in that lesson, to be able to create a podcast for the rest of the class to listen to, or for them to access at a later stage. And it is important for children or learners to be able to access what they have podcasted. So it must always stay on record, like books stay on our bookshelves throughout the passages of time. So it's always something that we can go back to and reflect and take out and read. And let me just add this in while I'm talking about books. We never ever move away from books, right? Because books are they're a beautiful way of life. But because we're moving into the technological age and because everything is advancing so fast and so rapidly, we have to teach our children the values of communication and the tools of technology to be able to empower themselves to get going and to learn through these tools of technology as well. Okay, so let's talk about more about the access to technology. So we could leverage mobile devices. We could encourage the use of students or the school's mobile phone for short listening sessions, or maybe we could use free podcasting apps that work offline as well. Also, something to think about, we could collaborate with community partners like maybe libraries or local radio stations or NGOs, people that would offer or provide support for school projects to involve digital literacy into their learning curriculum. So there's always challenges, but there's also solutions at the same time. And then we move along to how long should our audios be? So when we think about length of anything, right, we don't want to get bored, okay? Because if something is too long, we're going to lose our students. We're going to lose the listenership. We can't create this type of communication where we are dragging things along and the children lose interest because we want them to be interested all the time. So we like to keep our audio segments short. We don't want to produce long, lengthy segments. We can call them micro podcasts, okay? 3 to 5 minutes. Focus on a scene, something that fits into your classroom time frame, your classroom. There must be, it must be able to maintain engagement. So everybody is able to access the tools of the session, but they are also able to maintain engagement at the same time. Another idea would be to have segmented storytelling. Okay, this is good too because we can break longer stories into parts or chapters, and each group in the classroom could work in a segment, and then at the end we could combine them into a classroom series. Something that at the end of the day you'll say, my grade 3 classroom today created a wonderful story, and it was teamwork. And won't they be thrilled when they are able to say that we did this together as a team? Okay. We can also look at active listening activities where we pause at intervals for reflection. We can bring in here comprehension questions, creative responses like what happens next, for example. What happens next? Children always like that question. What happens next? So we don't have to finish the story, but we can ask them to reflect and to add and to engage with us by asking the question, what happens next? And then we talk about highlighting the essential part of the segment. So we can use curated clips maybe from an existing audiobook and align them with the lesson objectives rather than playing just the full version. So when we take audiobooks, we can take sessions from there, we can take small segments from there, we can align it with our lesson objective to be able to inculcate the story that we are using that time in the classroom. And this would create a more viable learning experience for the children. So they know that they're not making a mistake because there's no mistakes when it comes to learners because we learn as we go along. Okay, we have to be able to teach them, we have to be able to educate them, but we also must make them aware that it is okay to make mistakes. And then we look at another challenge, which is peer mentoring and collaboration. This can also be a challenge because some students may be unfamiliar with podcasting tools or be hesitant to share their voices, right? But there's a solution as well. So we talk about peer tech mentors, right? We can identify the tech savvy students in the class. Okay. I like to say I wasn't tech savvy at the beginning of my podcasting journey, but as I'm going along, I'm learning and I'm learning new things every day. So in the same way, everybody is learning at the same time. So we identify these tech savvy students, we pair them with their peers who need guidance, and then we rotate the roles so that everyone learns and contributes at the same time. So it's not one person, it's everybody at the same time. We could use something called um, collaborative rather storytelling roles where we assign clear creative roles. So one person is the narrator, one person is the sound designer, one person is the editor, one person is the script writer. Imagine giving your students these types of titles. What an amazing feeling that would be to be able to create a badge, put a badge on them that says you the narrator, you the sound engineer, you are the editor and you are the script writer. Children would be so excited to be able to feel this kind of empowerment. You know, they feel valuable. So we can use simple tools, platforms like Anchor, Audacity, or even voice recorder apps. So it makes collaboration easier without the steep learning curves. Okay. And then there's reflection and feedback circles because it's always, always, always important to reflect and to have feedback. And feedback generated from your learners is this is the most important thing because when your students talk back to you, you learn and you understand what they know and how much they know and how they are enjoying the lesson. Okay, so after each episode, hold a brief peer review session where students give constructive feedback and celebrate each other's creativity. And if we have to bring this down to a grade 1 class, the way that we would do this feedback, I would use an engaging English craft activity. So I would throw out a few big craft papers and I would tell them, draw what you have learned from today's lesson. And then using that drawing, talk to us about the lesson today and how it has made you feel special. Why do you feel special today about this lesson? And what have you learned from this lesson today? And children, amazingly, everybody wants to share something. Everybody wants to be a superstar, as I said. They want to come to the front, they want to talk. And remember, always important to reward your learners. You have to praise them, and tell them that you have been so amazing today. You have learned so much from this new type of technology. And one day you're going to be a little podcaster and you're going to be telling stories to the world. Imagine putting that idea into their minds. It creates such an amazing feeling for them. So this is so important to remember always. As teachers, when we teach with our hearts because teaching is heart work. It's the basis of where everything stems from. And when we use our heart and when we put our heart into something, we can generate amazing results. So remember this always. I have put a sorry a an article on the screen that you have seen as well, that gives you a little view as well about learners challenges into the classrooms when we try to use all of these tools. So let's move on, right? Classroom ideas from the story to the podcast. Okay. So when you're going to do this in your classroom, okay, you're going to choose a local folk tale or a story, right? And you'll see the link that is shared there is talking about the best podcasts for kids because anywhere on the internet today, if you type in something about making a story into a podcast, you are able to understand that when you give your students some sort of ability to talk back to you, they want to do research, they want to find out more, they want to come back and tell you, I've learned this and I want to share this with you. Okay. Um, Then you can write a short, simple English script, right? This is for you as an educator. Record this as a podcast episode, right? And then share and reflect. What did my students learn from this? And a tip for you is to be able to help your students build creativity. So when you do this, when you create your own podcast script, once the entire thing is done, go back to the classroom. Share this podcast with your learners. Make them record or record them saying simple things. Maybe it's a small sentence. And you could use your board to be able to put up these little scripts that they need to say, small things that they can add to the story. Let them say it, record them saying it, right? And then put this into your podcast. When we use these different podcast apps, I promise you, it is an amazing, empowering feeling. There's so many ways that you can use these podcast apps to your advantage. You can edit, you can delay, you can forward, you can add, different jingles, you can use different sounds. Wonderful, wonderful ways to be able to create a podcast. So do this with your students. Do this podcast with them. Choose a local folktale or a story. Write the script, very small, right? And then record it as a podcast episode. You can do it beforehand or you can do it with your students in the classroom. It depends on your time, how you want to do it, what type of lesson objective you have for that time, what type of what length you want to go into your podcast as well. My take on this would be 5 minutes max, right? Especially if it's your first time. And the little script that you give your students to say in there must be very small. It mustn't be too long. They mustn't say anything too long, even if it's 3 words or 4 words. Then take that and add it into your podcast with the story, right? So another idea would be to make them a character. So give them a character. So maybe they can change their voice a little at the same time. And they would be able to align this with the story. And then at the end, we say students build creativity by being able to bring out their natural voice, by being able to laugh, and that's the wonderful part about podcasts these days. It is something where you hear a laugh in the background, or you hear a door closing, or you hear a rushing car. But all of this creates authenticity. It lends to the script and it makes it whole and it makes it more appealing and it makes it more wonderful for people to listen to. So when these students go home, you share it on the group and you say to the parents, this was our English class today, and I would like you to listen to our podcast. And it was created by our students, and you can put their names in there, and you can be able to share this with them. And when they come to school the next day, play it out for them again. And I promise you, it'll be such a wonderful session. I just want to just say thank you so much for everybody who is saying thank you in the chat for the session. It really makes for a good, engaging experience. So let's quickly look at our key takeaways. So we said oral traditions are powerful tools for language and identity. Audio brings student voices to the forefront. Digital storytelling fosters creativity, inclusion, and we're using simple free tools that can make a big difference. Right, a final reflection. Let's think about our students. Which story would you tell to access your students' voices next week in the classroom? Think about that and make sure that you are able to bring some sort of life into your English lessons. You can follow me on Instagram. This is my handle. You can listen to my podcasts and you can send me a message as well and we can connect further. Thank you so much for joining the session today. It's been a wonderful session being able to share with you as well.
Thank you, Tasneem. This was wonderful, very insightful and informative. So there were some links that you wanted us to pass on to the attendees. Would you like us to send those out
Yes,
now?
yes, please. Would you be able to send those out?
Yes, absolutely. So if we can send out the links, please, to the attendees for the useful resources and materials for today's session, that would be great. Thank you. All right. So can we have some questions actually that are coming on our platforms from Facebook and here on Zoom. So actually, let me start with the ones that I have from Facebook. So we
Yeah.
have a question that says, could you give some examples of storytelling for high school and higher education?
Okay. So, like I said at the beginning, where it's this session was mainly for elementary, but we like to think out of the box. So this question I love. When I talk about high school and middle school learners, because we want to keep it curriculum related, I wouldn't say go too out of the box. Try to keep it related to what they're learning at the moment in the classroom so that you can always come back to the session. You can always come back to the story and you can say, do you remember that lesson that we were talking about last week, where we were talking about, for example, careers? Let's talk about this today. And I want you to listen to an audiobook about careers and different children talking about how what types of careers they would like to go to when they finish school. And let's do a session after this, which is a podcast where you talk about your career and what you would like to do. So always bring it back to the learning curriculum. Don't stray too far off. And with high school, I think about literature, I think about engagement, I think about real stories or personal reflections. Personal reflections are real. They talk about personal life. They talk about people's stories about history and about culture. And this is what we wanted to bring in today in this webinar, talking about heritage and storytelling in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very useful, making it personalized, bringing it back to the curriculum. So I have another question here that is
Sure.
on Zoom that says, should all of these tools be integrated in everyday lessons, or should they be considered extracurricular activities?
Look, when you're an educator, you have the world at your fingertips, right? You are able to teach your students whatever you want to teach them, but always maintaining curriculum at the same time. So this is a flexible answer. You can do it as
Hmm.
you wish.
Hmm.
And remember, always reflect on what you teach. At the end of the week, when you're doing your lesson planning for the next week, also try to take something that you've used from the week before and share it into the week coming so that they don't forget. This is what we
Hmm.
did last week and we're reflecting on it this week as well. So it's like the wheels of a car. Keep that car, those wheels moving all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, so it depends on a lot of factors and it's up to the teacher to
Absolutely.
decide. But you wouldn't call it an extracurricular activity.
I wouldn't call it an extracurricular activity. I would call it an assisted way of learning. An
Hmm.
assisted way of learning because it's another resource that you can bring into your classroom. Because
Hmm.
communication, as I said, is a tool. It's a tool that is very important to be able to teach our learners. And there are many ways of teaching this type of communication. So I would call
Hmm.
it an assisted way of learning, not actually an extracurricular activity.
Hmm. Lovely. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next question, which is about using storyboards effectively with young learners. So if we were to use storyboards in specific with young learners, how can we do that effectively?
So I said in my previous slide that I'd like to use storyboards at the end of the lesson. But if you want to start by doing this at the beginning of the lesson, that's great as well. So when we talk about making a story or an audio in the classroom, it's always nice to have a plan. Storyboards work well with a plan, especially with our little learners. They can't
Hmm.
write everything at that delicate age, but they can draw and they can take pictures and they can stick things and they can create a plan and they love this. It inspires creativity in them. So storyboard will be very interesting to use in the classroom. You can use it at the beginning of the session and then you can use it at the end of the session as well to come back and reflect on the classroom lesson and how did everything go.
Very nice. Thank you so much. All right, so we have another question that's asking about how we might choose stories that are appropriate for our students' language level and still keep them interested and engaged.
Okay, so when we talk about language learning, or the language level, did you say, hey?
Yes.
Yes. Look, that's also going to depend on the cycle or the age of learners that you're teaching also. So in the curriculum itself, it's nice to choose books that are if you're looking at grade one, grade two, grade three, okay, grade one and grade two, I like to use more picture books at the beginning. And then
Hmm.
later on in the term, in the school term, as they develop more writing and reading skills, then I would bring in maybe books with one line or two lines or three lines in them. But remember, we're always trying to teach students writing skills and reading skills from the onset. So don't limit the things that you think that they know. Try to think about things that maybe it can create an interest for them, even though they're just starting out. So always choose the level of your students when choosing your books, and just create with that, go with that.
Hmm.
Children,
Hmm.
sometimes children learn things from other places. They might be watching something with an older sibling. They'll come back and they'll tell you about that. For example, one of the students said to me something the other day, and I was like, where did you learn this from? It's like, no, I watched it on YouTube. Like, okay, I
Hmm.
need to go to YouTube and watch this because I don't know this, so children can teach us so many things at the same time as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, yeah. So to recap, it's just not to limit our students, expose
Yes.
them as much as we can, and just push to see where their limits are.
And like I
So,
said before, Hind, I said, we are the custodians in the classroom when it comes to learners.
mhm,
As a teacher, your role is to be able to look after your students. So
mhm,
you're always monitoring, you're always able to be there with them to see
mhm.
what they're doing and what they're learning. So that's your role. And then when they go home,
Absolutely.
obviously it's their parents that take over
Yeah.
from there. Yes.
All right. I have another question that's more about the technicalities of podcasts. So, someone is asking how many students would you suggest work on a podcast?
A whole classroom. Why not? But I said before as well, right? When we talk about storytelling, everybody in the classroom wants to talk, right? Everybody wants to tell the story and everybody wants to be involved. You might get those students who are afraid of coming forward and speaking, but they're able to
Mhm,
write the script, or they are
mhm.
able to draw the script. So this is where I
Yeah.
spoke about scaffolding our learners in the classroom. I wouldn't say take
I'm
five
sorry to
children.
interrupt. I think you're kind of answering it now. I think the
Yes.
question is targeting maybe group work on podcasts, like you
Oh,
said. So
yes.
if I'm
Yes.
gonna put them in a group, like you said, I can give them the chance
Yes.
to write the script and then somebody to record it. So how many students would you suggest would be suitable for
In a
creating a
group,
podcast? Yeah.
about five in a group.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
five would work because one of your students would be the student that would be able to be the tech savvy one, as I mentioned before. One
Mhm.
student would be your narrator, one student would be your sound designer, one student
Mhm.
would be your story writer. So it's
Mhm.
nice to create not a very small group, 5 to 6 students in a group would work. But
Mhm.
again, as an educator, you know your students in the classroom, you
Right.
know what they're capable of. So you start with where you feel you can, and then you can always build from there. And then obviously, when you move on to different ages of your students, things turn out differently as well.
Yeah.
So when you get to the high school, you might find there's only two in a group. One is writing and one is speaking, and that could work well as well.
Yeah.
So it depends. It depends as well.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. This was very insightful, very informative. We enjoyed it. And I'm going to have to wrap up here now. So
Yes.
thank you to our moderators on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube. And we'll be back in 1 hour with a third webinar on From Barrier to Bridge, Exploiting Learners and One to Teach Vocabulary. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.